The title of the paper is Skin Exposure to UVB Light Induces a Skin-Brain-Gonad Axis and Sexual Behavior. And so they looked at both an animal model aspect of the study. It was a 24-week mice model. And then they wanted to sort of figure out the purported mechanisms. Like, hey, what are the biologic reasons as to how sun can improve hormone levels in mammals like mice? And are those effects translative over in different species, i.e. humans? Now, the take-home message here, I'll just give it to you right up front, is 25 minutes of full-body sun exposure during the middle part of the day significantly increases to a statistically significant degree testosterone levels in men and favorable hormone levels in women, mostly estrogen, progesterone, and anti-Mullerian hormone. So AMH is a hormone that actually declines as women get closer and closer to menopause. I mentioned that fertility rates are down, conception rates are down, and testosterone levels are down. What's also showing changes compared to historical patterns is menopause is occurring earlier and earlier in women. So why is that happening? Well, the scientists speculate that because we're not getting full body sun exposure and we're using all this artificial light, our body, namely our skin to the brain and the gonads, that axis is sort of tweaked. What these scientists wanted to figure out is how does the UVB radiation in animals impact hormone levels? And they figured out that the direct exposure to UVB radiation from sunlight in the same wavelengths as sunlight, it was able to affect their keratinocytes and this p53 enzyme, and that then communicated to the gonads in the brain to increase testosterone levels and assertive behavior. By both males and women, they weren't blindfolded. So the scientists admit we don't really know if part of the mechanism could be direct exposure via the eyes and or the skin or the combination thereof. And I mention this point because I see so many people wearing sunglasses. Okay, so if your hormone levels are not good, if you're trying to get pregnant, try to get full body sun exposure without sunglasses, because it could be that part of the mechanism here is not just via the skin, it's also via neurons within the brain that are sensing light via the eyes. The scientists go on to say that the full body sun exposure in both animals and the mice improves sexual responsiveness, which in turn increases male sexual arousal behavior. And so the UVB treatment significantly increased the desire for male to female interaction and female attractiveness towards males. In both mice and humans, when the female mice and humans are exposed to the UVB, the females release more pheromones that cause the males to be more attracted. Really important, now this is a smaller study. There was 9 men, 10 women between the ages of 18 and 55 years old, and they were asked to avoid sun exposure for 2 days prior to the start of the study. Then the intervention period was 25 minutes in the sun on a bright sunny midday. Okay, and they quantified the lux of the light and so forth, and then blood samples were collected on the day before the sun exposure and approximately on the same time of the day during the sun exposure. And what they found is there was a significant positive activation for upstream regulators of beta-estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, and estrogen in both men and women, comparing no sun days compared to getting full body sun exposure days. And they figured out that certain people are hyper responders to sun exposure compared to others. So if you have darker skin, for example, you have more melanin in your skin, then perhaps you might need maybe 35 minutes of sun exposure a day or 40 minutes of sun exposure a day. So skin tone does impact the UVB, gonadal skin brain axis. So we got to think about that as well. And we know this to be true with vitamin D. If you're darker skin, then you need more sun exposure to induce the same amounts of vitamin D3 from the skin. The scientists say our data suggests a skin-brain crosstalk in which the skin acts as a dermatoendocrine organ, releasing hormones that affect the hypothalamus-pituitary-gonadal axis. The mechanism of action may be similar to that of beta endorphins and CRH, which is corticotrophin-releasing hormone, which are released from the skin and affect the opioid skin axis. They go on to say the immune system, or as of yet unknown regulators. Because the eyes of the mice and human volunteers were not covered, we cannot exclude the possibility that solar UV radiation to the eye affected the observed sexual behavior. UVB exposure via the eye activates the hypothalamic pituitary propio-melanocortican system, which is upstream to the HPA and the HPG axis. However, when we depleted p53 from skin keratinocytes, we observed suppression of the UV-induced sexual behavior traits, as well as significant decreases in the hormone to the HPG axis, which favor our hypothesis that in addition to the eyes, the skin has an active part in regulating sexuality. What do we do for our skin? We put skincare products on there that have parabens, that have artificial scents and fragrances, that have persistent organic pollutants that are altering the hormone levels. We are suppressing the UVB radiation on our skin with sunscreen. We are covering up our skin. We're in the shades. We wear hats, right? We are taught that the sun is bad. That's what the mainstream narrative has been. If you're in the sun, you're going to get cancer. That's what people believe. So they're dousing their kids with sunscreen. We have kids that are going into menarche. They're starting to get menses now at 9 years old. This has historically never happened. This is incredible. So we are unfortunately augmenting nature and the natural biologic processes that would cause natural ebbs and flows and cyclical cycles in hormone levels and testosterone levels. You know, we've known for a long time that men's testosterone peaks in July. Now we know that that peak is much lower for westernized countries compared to, say, countries in Africa, probably because of all the things that we're doing here. So there should be a natural sort of diurnal rhythm here with testosterone, and we now know that the skin plays a vital role. So please, at least get 25 minutes per day before you start lathering up in sunscreen and covering up. I mean, that's just the bottom line here.